Welcome, everyone, to our program on defining and actualizing zero waste on college campuses. Today, I'm going to introduce you. First of all, my name is Michelle Thatcher. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce and the creator of the Global Climate Pledge, but who's leading the team meeting today is Hadley Willman, and she is our university Climate Ambassador Director, among many other titles. So Hadley, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Michelle, for that introduction, and thank you all for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon or evening for some of you. As Michelle mentioned, I direct the University Climate Ambassador Program at the Global Climate Pledge under the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce. And with the Ambassador Program, our goal is to bring together students from campuses all around the country and the world to share strategies and accelerate sustainable progress on campuses for a greener future. And we have students doing such great work in so many areas. And we found that waste and dining are very popular areas in that regard for so many students everywhere. And when it comes to our students, we want to make sure that they feel as confident as possible going to implement changes or advocate for changes on campus. And in that regard, we want to bring in expert speakers to educate them and share their stories and successes and strategies. And so that is what the purpose of this webinar today is. We're joined by three wonderful speakers from two organizations, and we will be starting with two representatives from the Post-Landfill Action Network, or PLAN. We have Alex Freid and Ramiro Murguia. So I will turn it over to you both.
Yeah, hello everybody. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I will start sharing my screen here. And hopefully this works well. Like we said, my name is Ramiro. I am PLAN's Director of Events, and Alex, I'll let you introduce yourself really quickly.
Yeah, my name is Alex. I use he, him pronouns. I've been with PLAN for a number of years, worn a couple of different hats of the organization. I'm currently the director of the Atlas Zero Waste program, which is one of our 5 programs.
Yeah, so we're going to start us off with a presentation called the Zero Waste Campus is Possible. This kind of takes you through, takes us kind of through the basics core of the work that PLAN does, and our theory of change, and kind of how we at PLAN approach this work of a zero waste campus. So to start us off, just a quick little run through the agenda. We're just going to introduce PLAN in what zero waste means, defining the problem within the linear consumption economy, our points of intervention theory, the power as students as a catalyst for change, and then kind of ending in this solutions on beyond the campus and the circular economy. So quick background on who we PLAN are. So this is a picture of our conference in 2019 at the University of Pennsylvania. This is our Students for Zero Waste conferences, and we use this image to kind of show growth and culmination of a lot of the things that we've done. But PLAN started 10 years ago. We're actually celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, so big hooray for that, making it this long. At the University of New Hampshire, we started doing a program called Trash to Treasure, and it was a collection at the end of the year where, we've all seen it on college campuses. At the end of the year, there's so much waste that goes because everybody needs to furnish their dorm room, but then at the end of the day, they got to throw it all away. And then students saw that, and they were like, what if we collected everything and then sold it back to everybody at the beginning of the new year, so people don't have to, so that we are avoiding waste, and that we are, making it so that people don't have to buy everything new, that we can kind of give all of this furniture and everything a second life. And what made this project in itself very unique was that it was entirely student-led. It was started by the students, and students did the collection, they did the storing, they did everything. And it was completely self-sustaining. They made enough money during the sale to be able to pay for all the storage and everything, and then continue the program into the next year. And then students saw that, and they kind of caught wind of what was going on. They're like, hey, can you teach us how to do that? And we started teaching students how to continue building out sales on their campuses. And then they're like, well, we are also having problems with compost, or we're also having issues with this other thing. Can you all teach us how to do that? And we're like, okay. And we started slowly growing beyond just move out sales and kind of grow into what Plan is today. So what that is now is like Plan does a variety of different things. So we run through a membership system, but we do like one-on-one project advising with campuses. We do a lot of like events. So the picture you just saw is the Students for Zero Waste Conference, which is something that we do every year in Philadelphia. It's led by me, the planning side of things, but also doing like a lot of Beyond Waste leadership intensives and other kinds of events. And then we also help campuses and students advocate to do like the Break Free from Plastic pledge, which is like getting their college presidents to sign a pledge that they will work to remove any like unreasonable single-use plastic on a college campus. And then we also have Atlas Zero Waste Fellowship, which is what Alex actually works on and leads. And there's a lot of other things that we do here at Plan, but this is just kind of how we've grown and where we've come from. So getting us started, I think our talk is like, talking about campuses becoming zero waste. So I think first and foremost, we need to start off with just the question that is, what is zero waste? When you hear zero waste, what are you all thinking? And I would love to, if anybody in the chat wants to like quickly, what does zero waste mean to you all in this context? And I'm gonna pull up a quick, I'm gonna pull up in the chat if anyone in the chat wants to like quickly throw in like, continually reusing resources. Reducing extraction and production, I think zero waste is a term nowadays that if you ask 20 different people, you'll probably get 20 different answers. Zero waste is a foundation for a circular economy. A pretty familiar name. Conserving resources and diverting 90% of what waste from waste and landfills and waste to energy. So it's hitting a nail on the head. It's been to a few Plan presentations before, but when you talk about Plan, and when we're talking about zero waste, the typical popular definition that is used on college campuses or in different organizations outside, the popular definition is this concept of 90% diversion rate. When we're talking about diversion, what typically is being talked about is recycling and compost. And while this is good and it's important, diversion in a lot of ways, and especially how we like to talk about at Plan about waste, is not always fully encompassing, because diversion as it stands in this model is only focusing on recycling and composting. And when we look at a zero waste hierarchy, this is an image by the Energy Justice Network, recycling and compost is just one sliver in this in this whole hierarchy. And I think this it's very limiting in a lot of ways with this like standard diversion definition. So when Plan talks about diversion, we are also talking about some other aspects of this idea. So we're talking about like rethinking and redesigning products, reducing products, reusing the products that we use, like all of these different aspects, which in a lot of ways actually get penalized in typical diversion, because diversion is a math equation in a lot of ways, where it's, if the denominator gets smaller, so the amount of waste that you're producing, the number as a whole gets smaller, and that actually negatively impacts your diversion rate, even though you are producing less waste, which in a way is good. It's good. It's better. Like, it's good that you are reducing your waste, but when you're talking about diversion in this very narrow-minded sliver of recycling and compost, it gets that idea gets a little bit overlooked. And the reason why we talk about waste in this holistic model is because, when we talk about waste, we have to think about it through the entire process of the linear consumption economy. So the linear consumption economy, as Plan defines it, is these 5 steps of extraction, production, distribution, consumption, and disposal. And the diversion metric that is typically used, that is typically described, focuses on the last 2 points, on consumption and disposal, which are great and important because they are the areas where we as consumers are come into most contact with materials. But waste does not become waste at consumption and disposal. Waste becomes waste from the moment of extraction. So if we are not thinking about waste from that point of extraction, we are not rethinking, reducing, reusing like all of the products and holistically thinking about how we are going to be addressing this, we can't really think about zero waste, and we can't say we're achieving true zero waste. So why is this all important? Why are we focusing so much on waste? What does this all mean? Well, there's a variety of things, but the products that we use and the waste that we create, a lot of it can be avoided, and a lot of it can be and a lot of it is planned through this concept of planned obsolescence. So we have a little quote here. It's like our whole economy is based on planned obsolescence. We make good products, we induce people to buy them, and the next year we deliberately introduce something that makes these products seem old-fashioned, out of date, obsolete. And we do this for the most soundest of reasons, to make money. And this comes from like an industrial designer. This is this concept of planned obsolescence, something that I think has become a lot more commonly spoken about these days. But the products that we have now are designed in a way to continuously be having to be replaced. And when it comes to planned obsolescence, there's 2 types that we like to focus on. There's the functional planned obsolescence, and then there's the systemic planned obsolescence. So when you're thinking about planned obsolescence, there's a lot of ways that you can do it. So when you're thinking about functional, this is your like phones, laptops, technology of the world, which are made so that they cannot be like easily fixed, easily repaired, or like certain things over years with like updates, they're like made slower, these kinds of things. And this is something that we've seen through like the different technology companies of the world, or like just the different a big one right now is John Deere and their right to repair side of things, where they are software locking tractors, and the tractor is perfectly fine, but because you are not paying John Deere to work on your tractor, you're left without you're left with just a giant paperweight. And then there's systemic waste, systemic planned obsolescence. These are more conceptual sides of planned obsolescence. So this is the fashion trends. This is all of that. This is designing products to fail. And this is all important because when we're talking about our products and we're talking about everything that we use on a day-to-day basis, we have to think about where that stuff comes from. And that stuff is coming from oil. Like everything that we use, plastic, from the teddy bear that we have to the plastic duck to your phone, everything comes from oil. Plastic comes from oil. And oftentimes that's not, there's often this really big fight against the petrochemical industry in different aspects of transportation or energy, but we aren't thinking about it in the day-to-day products that we use. And this is important because we have, if this is leaving, we have to think about where it's going. And plastic isn't that bad. Come on, we recycle it, right? Not really. Only 9% of all plastic that we've ever made has ever been recycled. The rest is pollution, and it depends on what we mean by that and where that's going. But like the reality of it is that like what do we have right now? It's like we have a bunch of patchwork solutions. We have incinerators, landfills, composting, and recycling. And what happens when these systems like aren't working well? Like what happens when the system fails? Like it kind of happens what's going on right now. So like as we see, like there's landfills, and landfills have become this like cesspool that will eventually leak and pollute this the local community. They're also constantly decomposing, and there's a bunch of carbon dioxide and methane, which are two awful greenhouse gases which contribute to climate change. And then just by numbers, in the US, 17% of our methane comes from landfills. Like that's a pretty large chunk of the overall system when you're looking at it through like natural gas systems and like other areas of production. And then, all right, cool, landfill's bad. But what if we took something that nobody wants, trash, waste, and we made something that everybody needs, like energy, like we're making electricity, things that we need to like work through our thing to make our daily lives function. And that's when we get into this idea of incineration, or as it's oftentimes sold to us as, waste to energy. But this doesn't really solve any problems. Waste to energy produces a lot of hazardous ash, which then creates the problem of, all right, what are we gonna do with this ash? Well, we've got to send the ash to a landfill, and now we have a landfill full of ash that's like incredibly toxic and awful, bad. They're often one of the worst, and with like frequently with environmental violations, and they're often producing a crap ton of dioxins, which are just awful toxins that hurt the community around it. Okay, but like I don't live next to you might be thinking to yourself, like, I've never seen a landfill, or I've never seen an incinerator. So like they can't be that bad. Like they can't be in that too like they can't be too bad, right? Well, great question. Where are they? If you've never seen one, or if you've never had to interact with one, like where does this go? Who is it harming? And when we see that, we have to talk about the concept of redlining. Redlining is an old concept of focusing on, dividing subdivisions in neighborhoods based on their quote unquote like economic viability and their like perceived value. And oftentimes this concept of redlining was based in environmental racism. And it would refuse loans to somebody based on where they lived because they were deemed as like poor financial risks. And this often was these neighborhoods often tended to be, Black and brown communities, like immigrant communities that were deemed as disposable. And this kind of all ties into this concept of like environmental racism and injustice, where there is a lot of environmental racism, as we have it defined here, is environmental racism is disproportionate impact of environmental hazards on people of color. Environmental justice is the movement's response to environmental racism. And this is from the website Green Action for Health and Environmental Justice, a frontline community organization that we often look to. And when we are looking at the impacts of waste and the negative impacts of waste, the people that they are impacting might not be like yourself or like your community, but they are impacting some of the most vulnerable communities in our immediate areas. So we're relying on a system it does not work. I'm going to pass it off to Alex here to talk about some of the solutions.
Yeah, thanks, Ramiro. Is it easy for me to also share screen, or should we keep it with you? I'm disabled, so I'm not sure that I can. Like my host sharing screen is disabled. Do you want to keep doing it?
Yeah, just tell me when to go.
All right. Okay. Yeah, go ahead to the next slide. So, oh, geez. 1 second. Let me make sure that my laptop does not die in the middle of this presentation. We're good. Okay. So Ramiro just shared with you all some of the problems, challenges with what we would refer to as the linear consumption economy. This image is Plan's theory of change. So this is an image that represents the linear consumption economy in red, but the sort of bluish images are what we'd refer to as the points of intervention. The points of intervention is a theory and a framework developed by a bunch of other movement organizers. It's documented in a book called Beautiful Trouble. But the idea behind the points of intervention is nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. So as we look at the totality of the linear consumption economy, it is a mess. It's overwhelming, it's depressing, it's unjust in all kinds of ways. But there's a lot of pressure on us as young people to feel this sort of drive to have to fix all of it all at once. And that leads to burnout, and that leads to us sort of like not being able to make change in any significant way. So the idea is that like what we are encouraging people to do is to try to figure out what the intersection is between their skill set and their passion, right? We need people who are skilled organizers or who are willing to put themselves in the front lines to be doing things like resisting extraction and also resisting disposal. We need to be in solidarity with those movements at all points of the system. We also need people in the business world to be inside of the sustainable corporations that are working on redesigning products and packaging to move away from disposability and planned obsolescence, to design products that are durable, long-lasting, sustainably made, that have repairability built into them, that have repair programs and take-back programs as part of their system. We need people invested in innovation and solutions, in renewable technology and other technologies. We need people in local communities doing composting and repair and reuse and efforts to recover materials. And also there's like hundreds of other items that are not represented in this image, right? We need people working on regulation and legislation. We need people working on community organizing, and so on and so forth. Remember, if you want to go to the next slide. As I said, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. Next. So how does this look in practice? We have a couple of examples. So we started off, yeah. So examples outside of college campuses, efforts to stop pipelines, point of extraction, point of extraction. The right to repair movement is big right now. So there's a lot of efforts in terms of like legislative fights to establish what's called extended producer responsibility. And this is in a variety of different places. But looking at like, how do we require companies to establish products that are repairable or have take-back programs? Or one of the big pieces of right to repair is sort of what Ramiro was referring to earlier. So like consumer goods, whether it's a John Deere tractor or an Apple phone, what does it look like for the rule to be you are allowed to own and therefore repair this product? It is yours. The warranty does not get voided just because you popped it open to fix something. You want to go to the next slide? Fighting infrastructure. So this is an effort happening up in my neck of the woods. I live in New Hampshire. So this is happening up in Maine. The Penobscot Nation are fighting to protect the Penobscot River. They have been doing water testing analysis and have proven that the landfill, that they call the Juniper Ridge landfill, is leaking into their waterway. And so they are working to fight the expansion of that landfill. On college campuses, historically, there's been a lot of movements. There's been a lot of like growth in terms of how social change has happened. So on the next slide, we have a couple of examples of the history of how students have led the way on these types of things. I'm sure these are all very familiar to you. Divesting from fossil fuels was in many ways a movement that happened about 5 or 10 years ago, is still sort of happening today, but took its notes from the apartheid divestment movement of the late 80s. You have the anti-war movement of the 60s and 70s. You have the civil rights movement, etc. So looking at how this works on college campuses are great communities. They're a space to sort of test things and new ideas without significant like external risk, right? Like college campuses are sort of microcosms of society in many ways. They're spaces where students are learning, but they're also able to live in a community, in a communal setting, and also an idea can sort of test solutions and see what works and what doesn't, and work to build infrastructure on their campuses. So we have a couple of examples to show you. We have literally hundreds of these types of pictures. It is overwhelming what our Google Drive folders look like sometimes, because we go to campuses and we work with awesome students and we get to do visits, and we often will take pictures of how these programs work. And some of them are great and inspiring. And so for every photo we show you, just know that there are dozens more that we're not sharing. But we're going to run through a couple of examples. So Warren Wilson College, they have a student-run free store. I love the way that it's organized. I think it's very clever. You can go to the next one. This is one of the programs that started Plan. This is the Trash to Treasure program at the University of New Hampshire. So this is the end of year stuff collected. So as Ramiro was saying, all this stuff previously went to a landfill. That's what Move Out was. And then as a result of students organizing, this stuff was collected, stored over the summer. A yard sale is held during move-in weekend. And so freshmen, parents come to this big event as part of orientation, and they get to get all this great stuff for really cheap prices. They're not going through that whole linear consumption economy of extracting something new to make a microwave in order to buy a brand new microwave. There's already 200 microwaves sitting there that were left behind by last year's students. A lot of campuses are working towards expanding what we would refer to as hard to recycle material collection. So when we say hard to recycle material, we mean material that doesn't go in a traditional recycling bin. Oftentimes these are things like electronic waste, batteries, and light bulbs, but also things like plastic film. I'm sure if you've ever gone into like a grocery store and you've seen that you can bring your plastic bags back, setting up stations on campus for a collection of unique hard to recycle materials. Another example on the next slide is another hard to recycle material that campuses are doing a lot of collection of, which is styrofoam. So this is 3 different campuses: Michigan State, CU Boulder, Arizona State, all doing styrofoam collection, especially for shipments, especially in places like medical facilities or laboratories where you get a lot of styrofoam coolers and stuff like that. All right, next. You may be familiar with this. A lot of campuses are doing food recovery work. So this is working with dining halls that overproduce food. So if it's like a buffet style dining hall, they might produce 25 trays of something, but then on that given day, only 23 of them were eaten. So you have 2 trays left. They'll coordinate with these teams of students. Students will come in, they'll package up those trays of food, and they work in partnership with local community. They'll identify nonprofit partners or churches or shelters, and they'll develop sort of logistics for delivering food safely within the right time frame to communities that can use it effectively. Reusable to-go containers is a big switch happening right now. We're documenting a lot of colleges working on different models of switching to reusable to-go containers all across campus. This is in dining halls, but also in coffee shops and cafes and convenience stores and taco bars and all kinds of other different places that serve food on campus. A wide variety of ways these are being implemented. So in this picture, you can see it's like a drop-off bin. For other campuses, they're starting to use a lot of tech. So like an app you can download on your phone that's an account attached to your use of your reusable to-go container, sort of like a library card. So your account says you have 3 containers checked out and you have 2 that are still available in your account. You can use your scanned QR code on your phone to check out your 4th container. You can bring back your 3 dirty containers, and then you can check those off with your QR codes, and you can show that you now have 4 available with your 1 checked out. So that whole system is being developed, and it's really cool to see that happening. Refill stations to avoid packaging is a big one. So we're starting to see a bunch of startups. This is one, Generation Conscious, great company, cool partner that we work with, where they're developing plastic-free refill stations for common household goods. So for example, with this one, it would be a detergent dispenser. These would dispense detergent sheets. So they would establish these stations in like laundry rooms. People wouldn't have to have jugs of laundry they would just go and swipe their card and they would have access to a handful, like maybe they get one detergent sheet, or maybe they'd get like a pack, like 10 detergent sheets. And you can also get these sort of refill cartons. So you could bring your refill carton, get your 10 detergent sheets, put them in the carton. But the idea is that you're eliminating the sort of single-use cycle of disposable packaging. A lot of campuses do zero waste events. Zero waste events have a wide variety of types. These pictures are from College of Charleston, but also Arizona State University. You can see the different types of signage, right? The little ones on the left are like table stands. So like every single event, every single person sitting at a table has a little stand that says, this is a zero waste event. Everything that you're eating is compostable. Put everything in the compost bin. Or you could have these big A-frame stands that could be distributed throughout a large event, like a commencement or a big sporting event. So a lot of campuses are moving towards like streamlining the way they run their events and eliminating disposables through that. A lot of campuses are switching. I'm sure this is familiar. I'm sure you've all seen this. Condiment refill, right? So working to eliminate like packets and sachets and little things like that. Eliminating these like tiny, what we would refer to as unnecessarily wrapped single-use items. We have the infrastructure to avoid the unnecessarily wrapped items. The unnecessarily wrapped items are just often for ease. And it's definitely possible to switch infrastructure around to make it so that we can get rid of those types of things. A lot of campuses are switching to indoor and outdoor water bottle refill stations. We've also seen some that are mobile, which are really cool. So like hook a hose up to it, has a filter attached to it, and you can just go and refill your water bottle at a sporting event or at commencement or whatever. Next. Standardizing bins and signage is a big one. So I'm sure many of you have seen bins like this on your campuses, but what we're looking for in this is like clear signage, right? Like the signage shows what goes in the bin. There's not a lot of confusion around what goes in what bin. The streams are color coded. So like composting is green, recycling is blue, black is trash. They're also shape coded. So you have like a diamond, a circular, and a square shape. And the idea behind working towards standardization is that it eliminates confusion. So a lot of the issues that we have with recycling these days and composting is contamination. And so how do we eliminate contamination? We work towards streamlining both what we bring into campus in terms of purchasing, but also what goes out of campus in terms of our disposal systems. I love it when campuses get creative with this. So this is like students made shadow boxes to make like a really clear image of what goes in what bin. Okay, next. A lot of campuses, the students themselves get very involved in composting. So this is a relatively small campus, but the students, have a job, and part of the job is that they're managing the compost system or they're doing the turning of the compost system. Other campuses have much larger facilities like this where they operate tractors and huge systems, and other campuses just sort of contract it out to a hauler. So for every campus, the logistics are going to be different based on what's available in their community. So to summarize all of this, just to sort of frame how we work as an organization, how we can support you all with these kinds of projects. We're a membership-based organization. Our membership is structured in a way where we have fees for campuses, but it's applied to the entire campus. So oftentimes it's the sustainability office that will cover the fee, but it depends on the campus. It could be like Student Senate, it could be a student organization. And also we have a system in place where we can offer campuses reduced cost or free membership if the campuses request it. So if you look at our website, the request form is right there. We call it the Movement Building Fund. We don't want cost to be a barrier to working to us. So we want campuses to be involved in the system, but like getting into that system should not be a challenge. Through that membership system, we provide access to our digital hub, which means that anyone with a .edu email address from your campus would have access to these resources. So it'd be our Beyond Waste Leadership Certification Program, downloadable manuals and resources, and a campus case study database that's 400 case studies deep, discounts with a bunch of really great sustainable partner companies, discounts to our annual events, and advising with us. So we have a team, and we regularly work with campuses to help them build programs like the ones that we just showed you. If you're wanting to go further than that, you want to go like even deeper, we run fellowship programs. So we have two different programs. The STOP Fellowship is currently only focused in the Ohio River Valley. It's students taking on oil and petrochemicals. So it's students on college campuses that are near facilities that are currently producing plastics, like petrochemical facilities, and it's students organizing on those campuses to resist those efforts. The Atlas Zero Waste Certification Fellowship is what I run. That's my role as a director of the Atlas Zero Waste program. And with that project, we want to support campuses with conducting holistic assessments of their campus's capacity to achieve zero waste, and helping campuses with building strategic plans. And so the fellowship program is a semester-long fellowship program where we train students and we guide them through the process of conducting these assessments. And all that information is available on our website, and you're definitely welcome to reach out to us. I think the next slide is like our how to sort of get involved. Or we're doing the action. Do we have time for this? Should we just skip this and go to questions? Yeah, let's skip this. Okay. So additional resources. Just in terms of just like how to get involved or stay involved in what we're doing. You can sign up for our newsletter to learn more about our events, our trainings, or conferences. These are like, we run a digital training series that's often free. So we'll send out information about that. Getting notifications of upcoming internship and fellowship opportunities. You can learn more about us on our website and at our certification program. You can explore our resources page. And if you want to download something, but you're not part of the membership, you can fill out the access request form at the bottom, and we'll review that and see if we can send you that resource. And you can reach out to us if you have any questions. We do follow-up calls. We're happy to talk to campuses or students individually. This is our contact info. You can follow us on social. And we can make sure all of the links I just mentioned are available to you all, whether it's that we share the slides or that we send a follow-up email with all of this. And I haven't followed the chat at all. So Ramiro, I hope you have, because I guess we'll get into Q&A now.
Yes,
Absolutely not, but here we go.
I can go ahead and read off the questions for you if you'd like.
Yeah, great.
Let me spotlight. So I'm going to skip mine since it was first, but there are quite a few. I think, let's see. Linda Carrata, who is also from Upstream, who is speaking soon, asked if the Trash to Treasure event has been implemented in other universities across the country.
Yeah, literally hundreds. So when we first started the organization 10 years ago, it was our main focus. Our first year, we had 9 college campuses that just the focus was replicating that model. The second year was 40 campuses. The third year was 80 campuses. And then we started to expand to all the other stuff we told you about today. So we continued to do advising and support of move-out programs, and they take a variety of different approaches. Like some do immediate donation to a nonprofit or a shelter, just depending on their logistics, where they're located, if they're in a city, what storage options there are, et cetera. So we've navigated a bunch of different sort of examples of how these programs work, but in terms of the issue of move-out waste and how to deal with it, we've worked with well over 200 campuses on that.
Perfect. And I think you just touched on this a bit, but Michelle asked if you as an organization are recycling the hard to recycle products, or are you finding businesses who are tackling that?
Yeah, we're not doing it. That would be a logistical conundrum to figure out how we would handle that. So like looking at the Atlas Zero Waste Assessment, so that's like us sort of looking at a 30,000-foot view of how does the college campus handle all of the things that flow through a typical college campus in terms of its capacity to achieve zero waste. Under that assessment, we look at 42 different categories of what we refer to as hard to recycle materials. So that's things like bricks, asphalt, drywall, different types of chemicals, batteries, light bulbs, laptops, et cetera, as well as plastic bags and textiles and mattresses. And so, I mean, you know, we would need the world's largest warehouse times 10 to handle college campuses materials. The role that we play is to help them understand logistics and aggregation. What are the best practices for how to handle the material, and what are the most ethical methods of disposing of it? So, you know, what are the third-party certifiers out there that are ensuring that electronic waste is being handled appropriately? What are the different types of solutions that are being shared with campuses, and which ones are greenwashing versus which ones are actual recycling? And what can they do with the materials that they're working to collect and dispose of?
Perfect. And we do have a lot of questions, but we should have time. We'll go into about 6 minutes from now. We have Mary Beth from Stevens Institute of Technology, New Jersey, who asked, for the trash to treasure type events, what do you do with what is not bought? And what are some of the biggest obstacles for implementing this program, if you know of typical ones for different universities?
Yeah. Every college campus is going to have a slightly different answer to this question. Part of our role as an organization is to advise them on how to answer this. So like our process is to be like, let's make sure you've thought through this question and let's work through the different components. So obstacles for each campus vary, because for some campuses, like they're able to establish partnerships with on-campus departments. And so that means that they can borrow a truck. Or for other campuses, there is no truck available, they have to rent a truck. For some campuses, storage is available just because of the way the campus is. For other campuses, the biggest challenge is storage. For other campuses, it's staffing and getting enough volunteers. We sort of have different like troubleshooting for each of those different issues. And so we'll work with the campus to sort of navigate like what to do, who to talk to, how to negotiate, what are your options. As far as what to do when it's all left over, the goal is to have as little left over as possible. So part of it is to do things like, okay, we've got 3 hours left, everything is half off. Like get rid of as much stuff as you possibly can so that you're just not spending as much time getting rid of things. But the other is planning ahead and having partners ready. So working with local thrift stores to come in and pick up clothing, identifying what items will have to be disposed of, because like maybe someone would have bought it, but realistically, like a Goodwill is not going to take it. And so like, how are we going to dispose of certain items in terms of hard to recycle material management? So, I mean, yeah, for each campus, it's just like a different process of them figuring out like, who are their partners in their community, who needs what, when, and how can we disperse these items as like sort of sustainably and ethically as possible.
And then we have Ashpreet from University of Florida. She said there are a few zero waste planning programs and tools becoming popular, such as Zero Waste USA, Zero Waste for Businesses through True, or ASHI, who has a section on waste diversion and minimization. How is Atlas different from these platforms? And what is one of the biggest obstacles and one biggest opportunity you see for zero waste to become successful in colleges?
Yeah, that's a big question. We're pretty confident that the Atlas Zero Waste Assessment has sort of a role in this. So there's a couple of different components here. True. So True is affiliated with LEED certification. Y'all are probably familiar with LEED certification. LEED certification is an assessment of a building, right? It's like this building is LEED certified. True has been developing a zero waste style certification for buildings. That makes sense in a lot of contexts. So if you want a hospital, or you want a hotel, or you want a restaurant to be certified zero waste, that's like their area of expertise, and that is totally legitimate. They're a great partner in that. The challenge on a college campus is the bureaucracy of the institution. So college campuses have, 3 different athletics facilities, 25 residential halls, 3 dining halls, 15 coffee shops, vendors and athletic, like just all these different components. And so to say one building is zero waste is to completely ignore the holistic nature of the college, right? The building is not zero waste. The building is being served by the institution. Like the building doesn't manage its own composting, and it doesn't manage its own surplus property. It doesn't manage its own hard to recycle material collection. There's an umbrella facilities department, and there's a zero waste department, and there are other parts of the campus that have to be established, that have to come to that one building and 40 or 50 other buildings to collect and manage those materials appropriately. And the challenge that campuses face is that what we see is a sort of a greenwashing effect of focusing on the most sustainable building. So we look at one building and we're like, that building is zero waste, gold star. But that is us like hyper focusing in on one building that is sort of the main building that often has like a big dining hall. And we're seeing that as like the only thing that we look at on the campus, and we're ignoring the fact that the logistics and the infrastructure have not been set up to properly serve the totality of the campus. So I think True is great for a lot of things, and is also missing a big part of the equation when it comes to zero waste assessments for a campus. ASHI Stars, so ASHI focuses on sustainability in higher education. They're a great partner of ours. So They are releasing their third version of their assessment. They're calling it STARS 3.0. We're on the advisory council for that, and we've been working with their manager to redesign their waste system, because there has been solid acknowledgement for years that the waste assessment within STARS is not enough. What we're looking to work towards with them right now is to redesign the way that it works, and then also to have Atlas scores count towards ASHE's waste section. So they'll play into each other. But to go further, ASHE's waste questions are like 12 questions. ASHE's waste questions is like 12 questions. Atlas takes an entire semester, is hundreds of questions, and is a detailed holistic assessment of all of these different types of materials, how they're collected, where they're collected, how they're managed, what their policies are, logistics, infrastructure, communication, et cetera, to really understand where the gaps are. So I think STARS doesn't go deep enough would be my answer. Yeah, I mean, we have more info on our website and a lot of campuses who've gone through this, who I think could also answer this question a little bit better, because there are campuses who have like done True, done Atlas, done STARS, and could answer why Atlas is working for them.
Perfect. And I've observed that with ASHE as well. So I appreciate the detail to your program. And thank you also, Ramiro, for answering questions in the chat. We'll ask one last one, and I think this one will be quick, and then we'll be done and move on to our next speaker. Jonathan, I believe, is Jonathan from Maharishi University, who asked, what area of zero waste do you think is undervalued or is in the most need to get solutions? It's a hard one, but it's all the same.
I'm in a very long, I'm responding in the chat to a lot of questions. So if we're not verbally answering your questions, check the chat, because I'm trying to get to them as we can. I have a very long-winded response here right now that I've been typing to this exact question to Jonathan. But I think to say that there is no one holistic, like this is the one topic that everybody can be working on. It's like, this is not a BuzzFeed article where we can be like, this one secret, like zero waste facilities will hate you. But because what one campus can do is entirely different than what another campus can do. It's really based on what infrastructure campuses have, and what you can do. I think if you were like looking at like what are other people doing, I think right now the big kick has been a lot of plastic and plastic reduction. I think that's been the really big overall, especially as we're getting out of this. There was a really big over-reliance on plastic during COVID, and we've like seen that like, hey, we don't need, like, we can be sanitary without this like excessive use of plastic. So it's like a kind of a really interesting transition, or we're like moving away from a lot of this unnecessary plastic. And I think that is something that is really is one area. Alex doing Atlas assessments everywhere, like also works with campuses across the board. Are you seeing anything that like you think campuses can be really easily like figure out?
I think if we're talking specifically to you all as a group of students, I think that there is a question that you would want to ask yourself of, do you want to take on a project that you probably will be able to make happen in the next couple of years? Or do you want to take on a campaign that probably won't officially finish before you graduate? And those are two different levels of impact. So if you want to take on a project, starting a free store, starting a move out program, starting a food recovery program, I keep on using the word program, right? Those are probably a key component of this. Like, they're programmatic solutions. They sort of fit in like a puzzle piece into a broader system. To do something like eliminate disposable plastics requires, like, let's use the puzzle piece analogy. It requires like completely destroying the Lego set and rebuilding it. And that doesn't mean that it's not possible. We are working with hundreds of campuses on campaigns and strategies and negotiations with administration and proposals, but it means restructuring. It means figuring out, what would it look like to change procurement policy to work towards long-term elimination of single-use disposable plastics, and then at the same time to have the infrastructure to handle the reusables, so to install industrial dishwashers and to hire the staff to wash them and to have the infrastructure across campus to collect them. Doable, super necessary. The world needs to go in that direction. We are seeing it happen on a lot of awesome campuses. You all can make that happen. But I think if the question that you're asking is like, what can I do? I would ask you, what type of impact do you want to have? Like, do you want to take on a project where you're like, I did it? Or do you want to like kickstart a campaign that you get to become like an advisor / alumni to?
Wonderful. Thank you very much for all those answers and for everyone asking so many questions. And Alex and Ramiro for joining us first and foremost. This has been very informational. And yeah, I think we probably could have used 3 hours with you both. So thank you so much for taking the time today and how late it is in the day for you. And everyone give it up for Post-Landfill Action Network. I hope to keep in touch with everything that you both are doing going forward. Next up, we have our final speaker from the Upstream Solutions nonprofit. They have been around for a very long time and they do such amazing work. And I'm very happy to introduce Macy Zander.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here today. Give me a moment to share my screen with y'all. All right. Great. Alex, Ramiro, brilliant presentation. So many great tangible pieces of information in there to act on. So thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. My name is Macy Zander. I am the Reuse Communities Policy and Engagement Officer here at Upstream. I am based in Austin, Texas, and my pronouns are she, her. And before I dive into the case for reuse as a zero waste solution, let me first introduce you to the organization I'm here representing today, Upstream. So Upstream is a national NGO that's been operating since 2003 with a focus on upstream solutions to plastic pollution. For us, that means transitioning away from the throwaway culture to a new way of thinking about goods and how they're delivered to consumers. We work to displace the disposability model with reuse and refill systems that offer safe, durable products that help to solve plastic pollution, toxic chemical exposure, climate change, and provide a just transition away from extractive and polluting processes that disproportionately harm low-income, Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities the very most. So since the very beginning, Upstream has been focused on addressing the ever-increasing quantity of waste being generated, with the understanding of how waste has furthered our plastics and our climate problems. While recycling and composting are definitely better forms of waste management, we have always focused on upstream solutions that prevent waste before it's even created in the first place. As one of our founders said, we're never going to be able to recycle or compost our way to a sustainable future. We have to work upstream to redesign the systems generating all the waste in the first place. So while Upstream has shifted its overall theory of change over the years, we have stayed true to this focus of finding and scaling upstream solutions to the world's waste problem. Today, our mission is to help leaders ideate, accelerate, and scale circular strategies that create thriving communities and build the reuse service infrastructure of tomorrow. So our overall mission, just to nest this conversation, is being propelled by our new 30 by 30 goal. So this goal means that we would like to see 30% of consumable goods sold in reusable formats across the US and Canada by 2030, specifically focusing on opportunities to transform the food service, beverage, and consumer packaged goods sector. We see the new reuse economy as a wholesale sifting of supply chains for consumable goods and services from the current single-use paradigm to new reuse service models. Given the complexity of this undertaking, it's going to require innovators, corporate sustainability officers, NGO staff, community leaders, government officials, folks at universities, all working together to transform how it is we consume. So our main focus as an organization, and I'll breeze through this quickly, is number one, focusing on policy change at the local, state, provincial, and federal level. We work with allies across the US and Canada to pass legislation that supports source reduction of waste and promotes reuse refill. We also work on social change to try and flip the switch on this cultural norm supporting single use and instead normalize reuse systems in its place. And then lastly, business innovation, which includes our work creating models and supporting businesses in the transformation from single use to reuse. So you might be asking why this heavy focus on reuse in favor of, instead of focusing on recycling or other zero waste solutions. So if there's one thing that we have learned as an organization at Upstream, using products for just a few minutes before they become waste is not a sustainable form of consumption for a planet of over 8 billion people and growing. Disposable products harm the planet by every measure of environmental impact, from resource extraction to loss of biodiversity, to air and water pollution, to water consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, toxic chemicals, as well as the harm associated with excessive waste. The current reality is that we are living in a throwaway economy where 10% of all the wood harvested, 20% of all the aluminum being mined, 40% of all plastic that is created, and 50% of all glass produced is going primarily to making single-use packaging that is consumed often in a matter of minutes before it gets trashed, recycled, or littered. It justifies the unnecessary extraction of precious natural resources on the front end while creating significant amounts of waste and pollution impacts on the back end. This system treats the planet as disposable. And all too often, the impacts of this disposability disproportionately are burdening people of color and low-income communities who live on the fence lines of extraction, manufacturing, and the disposal industries. Extracting hydrocarbons, metals, trees from the earth, and then turning them into throwaway packaging not only is an environmental crisis, it's also treating fence line communities as disposable. But there is some good news here. A new reuse economy is currently emerging where consumer products are being delivered in reusable packaging. These systems are becoming the foundation for a circular economy that stewards the resources we take from the planet and keeps them in a closed regional loop for as long as possible. This minimizes the need for natural resource extraction. It obviously prevents waste and pollution and creates local economic opportunities as well as jobs. This new reuse economy flips the switch and instead treats people and the planet as indisposable. So this means that single-use packaging products that are part of the take, make, dispose linear product life cycle are replaced with reusable and refillable systems where infrastructure is created for the systems needed to collect, wash, and return reusable packaging to its original location. So packaging is not a product that becomes waste. It's part of a service offered to deliver customers the goods they want to consume, and it's durable and doesn't become waste for a long time, if at all ever. So while single-use packaging is used for a plethora of consumer products, we at Upstream focus on transitioning food and beverage packaging to reusable as a priority for a variety of reasons. So the first is that data shows that food and beverage packaging escapes the waste management systems and is released into the environment more frequently than other product types. So while as individual items, cigarette butts have always topped the charts for Ocean Conservancy's coastal cleanup data, looking more closely, we see that grouped together, about 75% of the top 10 littered items are actually food and beverage packaging. Meanwhile, other litter studies have shown that about 70% of the products that are littered on city streets, which wash through storm drains and out to our nearby water bodies, is comprised of single-use food and beverage packaging. All this food packaging that enters the environment results from today's one-way, throwaway economic model for delivering food and beverages to consumers. starting with extractive systems for creating the raw materials, to the purchased disposable foodware items, to the waste and litter generated and the money spent managing it. Looking at the food service packaging system overall, the numbers are really astounding when you take a view from the United States. So this is including all the data from cities. So based on market research data, Upstream found in our Reuse Wins report that the food service industry uses nearly 1 trillion pieces of disposable foodware every year and spends $24 billion in purchasing these items. These products generate 9 million tons of waste. That's equivalent to 25 Empire State Buildings, just to put that in perspective. And local governments and businesses are spending $6 billion per year managing the resulting waste. Not only that, but 20 billion food and beverage packaging related items escape waste management and become litter, which lands on local governments spending $11.5 billion annually to clean up. So something that we see often is, well, let's focus on banning plastic. And when we think about the disposable foodware problem, that is the thing most folks do think about. Because that is the item that I think people most associate with our one-way throwaway model. And it is truly a significant crisis. 11 million metric tons of plastic waste enter the ocean per year based on a 2016 study. This adds to 150 million metric tons of plastics that have already accumulated in the world's oceans. People know that plastic is bad. It's killing fish, it's killing whales, turtles, even threatening human health as we discover that we're eating more and more plastic particles every single year. We're inhaling plastics, and recent concerning research shows that it may even be accumulating in major organs throughout our bodies. But is banning plastic the right solution for problems related to disposable products and packaging? Certainly, banning plastics will help solve the ocean plastics problem. And it will help solve plastic pollution. But the consequences of only focusing on one material type is that the alternative single-use material can have a host of other environmental and human health impacts that mean we're really just shifting the impacts. The alternative single-use materials can be just as devastating, and in some cases, even worse. Other single-use materials cause pollution, exacerbate climate change, extract precious and limited natural resources, propel loss of biodiversity, and threaten human health. In these ways, we term all single-use items as regrettable substitutes. And these demonstrate that it's not just plastic, it's just this whole concept of single-use itself. So for example, bio-based plastics are made from plants, like corn or starchy crops. These require fossil fuels to grow and in industrial agriculture growing systems, meaning that loads of fertilizer that pollute groundwater and surface water are necessary to create these materials. So think of eutrophication, dead zones in our inland and coastal waterways as a result of all the contaminated agricultural runoff. Another item that people often think about when they think about, oh, let's just shift to aluminum. Well, aluminum is indeed highly recyclable, which is wonderful. And while aluminum cans may contain an average of 75% recycled content, the non-recycled or virgin aluminum portion is incredibly harmful from a carbon emission lens. It actually has 5 times more carbon impact than the recycled content. And the mining of virgin aluminum releases a compound called fluorocarbons. To the chemistry folks in the audience, I apologize for my mispronunciation. And these are 9,200 times more harmful for CO2 emissions. That is simply staggering and not acceptable in a world where climate change is such a serious threat. And then, of course, in the age-old question, paper or plastic? Ultimately, the answer should be neither. Half of all the paper produced each year is for packaging, and that results in cutting down 3 billion trees a year. Trees are our precious defense against carbon emissions. And they're also necessary for cleaning our air, providing habitat, and cleaning water. The disposal of paper can also sometimes result in greater greenhouse gas emissions compared to plastics. So aside from banning single-use plastic, another way many policies and programs try to solve the problem is to focus on how disposable products are managed at their end of life, like making them more recyclable or more compostable. It turns out that there is a lot of mythology around the potential of these waste management type solutions. Recyclable products are only better 56% of the time. That's because most recovered materials are downcycled or end up in landfill and incineration, like foodware, because in reality, it's too contaminated to be recycled into new products. Compostable products are oftentimes a myth as well, unfortunately. Foodware is a contaminant that lowers the quality of compost, and most commercial composters around the country are starting to not accept it, especially plastic compostables, which often are getting sorted out and sent to landfill, where they actually produce 30 times more greenhouse gases than composted food and organic waste. And for the sake of time, I'm actually going to skip this slide. So anyway, this is why it's important to shift the focus and prioritize waste prevention or source reduction. The old 3 R's of solid waste management tell us that we should focus on source reduction. That is, reduce and reuse. First and foremost, we need to be prioritizing that. Once we've reduced as much as possible, then we need to find the best ways to manage the waste that is left. 2 main ways to prevent waste at the source are to eliminate the unnecessary stuff and then transition what we can to reusable and refillable formats. It makes sense that eliminating unnecessary products and switching to reusables are better for the people and the planet than disposable products. But here at Upstream, we wanted to know what the technical data was there to back that assumption. So we looked at a range of reports that compared disposable and reusable foodware products and found that this was true by every environmental measure. So Upstream has a report called the Reuse Wins Report. And in this report, we reviewed 16 life cycle analyses, or LCAs, comparing reuse versus single-use foodware, specifically cups, containers, plates, and utensils. LCAs are the only current technical methodology out there for assessing the environmental impacts of products. They generally consider as many as 14 environmental measurements of the environmental impact, including resource consumption, land use impacts, biodiversity impacts, air and water quality impacts, energy and water consumption, global warming potential, greenhouse gas emissions, and waste impacts. However, it is important to note that LCAs currently do not measure plastic pollution, litter and toxic chemical exposure, impacts to our health, and LCAs do have this big glaring lack within it, which actually makes the case for reuse even more compelling if those things were to be included. But for the time being, LCAs are the best tool that we have to assess the cradle to grave impacts of products. So some of our findings include that on balance, the weight of the evidence demonstrated reusables beat disposables by almost every single environmental measure. For plates versus clamshells and cups, only one of the LCAs that we looked at showed disposables were better. And to add an important piece of this conversation, it is important to understand the concept of the break-even point and understanding that the environmental impacts of reusables is contingent upon the number of times that they are used. Because reusable products are more material intensive, 1-to-1 compared to a disposable product, a reusable product is going to be more environmentally harmful. However, reusables are designed to be used for many, many, many uses versus a single-use disposable. So this break-even point is essentially the number of times a reusable product needs to be used in order to reach that break-even point in terms of the environmental impact with a disposable. The good news is reusables often, if not almost all the time, reach the break-even point where they outperform the disposables, and the benefits of the environment accrue with each additional use past that point. So based on the LCAs that we looked at for cups, the break-even point, depending on the LCA, was anywhere between 2 to 122 uses. And I know that that is a broad swath. A lot of these LCAs are using different methodology, but though that is the range that we saw. And it was very contingent upon the type of material that the cup was composed of. For plates and clamshells, The break even can be anywhere from as low from 3 uses to 50 uses. And for utensils, only 2 uses of a reusable is required to start occupying more or start generating more environmental benefit than its disposable plastic counterpart. These LCAs show that reusables are by far better for the climate. For example, looking at CO2 impacts of disposable paper, plastic, and bioplastic cups, the report found that disposables' carbon footprints was between 3 and 10 times higher than reusable ceramic, stainless steel, and glass. Findings for reusable polypropylene clamshells, like the ones that Alex and Ramiro showed us in their presentation, versus disposable fiber-based takeaway boxes, also have a dramatic carbon advantage versus their disposable counterpart. The same was found for porcelain plates versus disposable plastic and bio-based plastics, as well as cellulose fiber-based plates. And reusables generally have a lot lower water footprint over their life cycle, particularly glass and ceramic. Stainless steel is about the same, actually, when it comes to the water impact. Reusable cups, plates, utensils save water. For cups, glass, and ceramics consume way less water than stainless steel over their lifetime. And something that's important to note here is most of the water impact for reusables happens during the dishwashing phase, whereas for single-use products, most of the water impacts are related to the extraction, production, and manufacturing of those materials. So 1-to-1, a reusable cup would have a way bigger water footprint than a disposable one. But reusables are generally used, again, as I said, multiple times. So over their lifetime, a reusable does indeed, especially once it hits that break-even point, have a much lower water footprint than its disposable counterpart. So we calculated that 500 paper cups consume 370 gallons of water, whereas one ceramic cup that's used 500 times uses 53 gallons of water throughout those 500 uses. So over the lifetime, ceramic cups, which generally last for more than 1,000 uses, have a much lower footprint. So the new reuse economy for food service can save businesses and local government so much money by reducing waste and litter. In the report, the Reuse Wins report, we found that if we can shift on-site dining to 100% reusable and build out new reuse infrastructure in cities where 82% of the US population resides, we can remove 86% of disposables from the system. That means eliminating 840 million pieces of packaging, saving businesses $5 billion in operational cost, and communities $5 billion in waste management cost. In addition, the new reuse economy can eliminate 17 billion pieces of litter and create lots of local jobs and help create a just transition away from the polluting, extraction-based single-use system that is in place today. So with all this being said, we firmly believe that progress is not more recycling or material substitution or corporate commitments to the circular economy. Progress is about reducing the amount of natural resource extraction, energy use, and pollution required for human needs and desires. You might be thinking to yourself, all right, Macy, I get it. You've made the case. Reuse is great. We should shift away from single use, but that future doesn't exist. What does that even look like? So we are very aware that there's a lot of hard work that still needs to be done from across all sectors to ensure reuse becomes the new status quo moving forward. However, let me bring you to a future where society has fully embraced these reuse and refill concepts. In this future, all restaurants serve on real plates, they use real cutlery, and you are served all your drinks in real cups. To-go coffee is provided in returnable, reusable cups. Takeout and delivery comes in reusable to-go containers. At your favorite concert venue, everyone is drinking beer and soda outside of real cups. The same thing is true for your favorite drinks that you like to consume at home. They all come in refillable bottles. Or you can make your favorite products at home. You can get your groceries, cleaning, personal care products delivered in reusable containers straight to your home. Or you can pick them up at the store. And delivery drivers will pick up your reusable packaging when they drop them off. Or you might be able to put reusables in with your recycling. Or you can return them straight to the store that you purchased them at. Or return them while you're out and about. And none of these innovations are going to require you to bring your own anything. So this is the future of the reuse movement, and much of the solutions are already here and waiting to be scaled. It's all a mind shift away from thinking about packaging as a product and rather remaking it to be a service. So if this resonates with you, here are some ideas on how you can promote reuse on your campus or in your community. So as conveners and facilitators, we support folks across the US and Canada who are working to promote reuse in their own communities through a network that we host called the National Reuse Network. This network is comprised of hundreds of folks from across a variety of sectors, including nonprofits, reuse businesses, entrepreneurs, activists, governments, and individuals that simply are interested in this topic and want to see less litter on their streets. If you really want to focus on local level change at the grassroots level, you can organize and start your own community reuse coalition. There are currently 24 already operating across the US and Canada. There is no handbook for creating a reuse-centric city, but Upstream does provide a space for coalition leaders and other groups focusing on reuse to come together, ideate, and share best practices. These coalitions are working to promote reuse as a solution to our throwaway culture, which can take the form in advocating for local reuse policies, supporting reuse infrastructure, or expanding reuse in specific settings, like making sure all on-site campus dining is on reusables and bringing reusable takeout containers to your respective university dining halls. In terms of policy, we do believe that policies should prioritize source reduction by using reduce, reuse framing of the 3R priorities that I mentioned earlier. For single-use product and packaging policies, reuse means eliminating the unnecessary stuff. And once we've reduced that as much as possible, then the rest of products and packaging can be transitioned to reuse, which means policies that aim to normalize reuse and refill systems and behaviors. Upstream, along with our NGO allies in this space, have supported approximately 80 reuse-specific laws in the US, covering roughly a third of the population within the last few years. Some of the main opportunities that have been successful for all levels of government in the US include mandating reusables for all on-site dining, foodware accessories like cutlery, straws, condiment packets, only being provided upon request. So when you go through the drive-through, you're no longer getting 17 packets of ketchup that you didn't ask for. You have to request it in order to be getting it. Banning single-use products where it can lead to a reusable option, and promoting reuse at government events, workplaces, and in government procurement. So along with state and local governments jumping into action, the private sector has begun growing its reach and impact throughout the reuse space. Over the past 5 years, dozens of reuse service companies have popped up and have helped fill the existing gap within the new reuse economy. So these are just some examples of some companies that are out there. We are seeing companies that are focused on reuse in food service, which includes cups, takeout containers, dishwashing services, vending machines, reuse for events, and apps specifically catered to drink and foodware. We see reuse in retail and in grocery, which means in-store refill deliveries, mobile refill stations, meal and grocery pickup, meal and grocery delivery, bottle deposit and return. And then we're also beginning to see more reuse in shipping and packaging, which offers reusable packaging as an alternative. So if you have any reuse businesses that are in your community, do your best to support them. And if you yourself feel like you might be an aspiring entrepreneur, I encourage you to maybe consider filling the void that is in your community if you're in need of some reuse businesses. And then if you are trying to make the case for reuse at the university, Another really powerful tool to consider is Upstream's Chart Reuse. Chart Reuse is an industry-first reuse analytics program. This transformative tool allows food service companies to calculate their waste, greenhouse gas emissions, and manage their shift from single use to reuse at various project sites. The data can be really helpful in building the case for reuse, especially since having those hard economic numbers can often show that switching to reuse does indeed save money. If you are interested in Chart Reuse, we're very happy to show a demo to you. We're actually currently working with a university, and this is such a great tool for universities because they are closed systems, as the folks at Plan were mentioning. So very happy to connect on that. So with that, I will leave you with a view of our key reports, training presentations, podcasts, blogs, and vlogs, as well as some live streams. We make a lot of content here at Upstream, and all of it is open source. So please do check out our website, where you'll also find toolkits like our Climate and Reuse Toolkit and guides, such as our newly updated Business Outreach Playbook. And we'll also make sure that this presentation is circulated around so you have access to all of these links. And if you're interested in learning more, if the website wasn't enough, follow us on our socials, subscribe to our channels, and yeah, my email is there. So happy to hear from all of you, and thanks a lot for listening to me this evening.
Thank you, Macy, for sharing. And maybe before, could you bring up the slides one more time? There was one question from someone who joined late, Haley, about the glass statistic and how that compares, I think, to plastics or other single-use materials.
So when it comes to glass, yeah, I would recommend, if you're really interested in diving into the nitty-gritty of these LCAs, I would recommend looking at our reuse wins report. But what we have found is that glass is a great material. It's totally inert. There's no like chemical hazards associated with using glass. It is better than stainless steel for cups in terms of its water consumption. The only downside with glass is it is breakable. So you have to be like a little cautious, but yeah, we're definitely big fans of glass. And there's a lot of countries that are already running with reusable glass bottle systems. I mean, if you go to Germany, I think like 80-something% of all beer is sold in reusable glass bottles. And so glass is a great material that we definitely propose. And again, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of those LCAs, I would really recommend looking at the Reuse Wins report.
Perfect, thank you. And this was one of my questions, but I don't know if you could share on why specifically Upstream's goal is 30% reusables by 2030. If that's a goal that you've specifically said this is realistic or tangible, even if enough progress isn't perhaps being made yet.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely a moonshot goal. And I think that the reason why we chose, I was not privy to those goal setting conversations. So I can't give too much more context beside that, but I think 2030 also has a nice, 30 by 30 has a nice ring to it. We have our board member, Linda, on board. She might have more insights there. So Linda, if you have any insights where 30 by 30 came from, by all means, hop in.
Oops, I don't, but you know, that same goal is a target for many environmental initiatives. So in various climate action initiatives, other industries. So yeah, it's the 30 by 30 has a nice ring to it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like for biodiversity, like protected land for biodiversity is also 30 by 30. So just jumping on board with all the 30 by 30s for environmental goals.
Yeah, and I'm surprised to hear about those 80 reuse policies, which seem to help be making progress towards that.
Yeah, so. Definitely.
And we had a question from Ashpreet from University of Florida. She asked, do you work with on-campus vendors such as Aramark to motivate them to give reusable takeout? That might tie in with a partner for chart reuse, maybe?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So folks like Aramark are exactly the kind of folks that we want to drive to use chart reuse. So in that regard, yes, we do partner with big dining vendors like that. And if you're interested in being connected with our team that manages Chart Reuse, please connect with me over email and I will facilitate that introduction. And I'll drop my email in the chat.
And I believe your specialty doesn't lie with chart reuse, but she also asked, do you know the kind of infrastructure a college needs to collect back those reusables?
Yeah, I think a lot of the insights plan had were very good regarding that. So it could look like just having like how they showed the different bins, really making it clear what needs to go in each. You could have like a designated bin for reusables. And ideally, like a reusable clamshell, you would have that in every dining hall. You would probably have it in dorms, just like spreading it out throughout the campus, making sure that you could have the largest recapture rate of those reusable materials.
Perfect. And I think we have about 2 more questions. So this timing is working out very well. One from me was, are there certain institutions or organizations that you think are better suited to implement reuse solutions more quickly? Or are there some that perhaps take a little bit more time or convincing? So examples including restaurants or cafes, universities, hospitals, elementary through high schools.
That's a really great question. I would say the best, what we have seen at Upstream is closed systems are the best. So for example, college campuses are very, very strategic places to work. It could also be a corporate campus, like, I don't know, Microsoft's corporate campus, for example. Any kind of closed system where you have a higher likelihood of the foodware staying in a designated area is going to have better return rates, which is going to create a better ROI and also have a better environmental break-even point. So that's generally what we see. And I would say the ones that are the most challenging are going to be your open systems. So like an entire city. That is not to say it's impossible. There's actually a reuse coalition that's a public-private partnership with the city of Seattle. It's called Reuse Seattle. I highly recommend looking them up if you're like very into this topic. And they are trying to pilot reuse at city scale in an open system. But they have started off with concert venues because, again, closed systems are a little bit easier.
Wonderful. Concert venues make sense. And Michelle also asked if you know of any top companies that are providing innovative solutions that will help eliminate this one-way throwaway model in food and beverage industry. So this might include those who are providing reuse packaging.
There's a ton of great reusable service providers. I would recommend looking, gosh, there's so many. We have a business directory on our website. I will drop the link. And it is a very comprehensive list of all the businesses out there that are focusing on these problems. And I would say that these are the mover and shakers.
Mm-hmm.
These are the folks doing like the hard work on the ground.
Yeah. Linda shared that too. I'm sure it's so hard to remember those off the top of your head. So that's a very
Thank you,
helpful
Linda.
resource.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, one that comes to mind just because I've spoken with them recently, Delivers Zero, based out of New York, Reuso, which is in the Chicago area, Foreverware, Minneapolis. They're all focusing on reusable cups, and our cup is the biggest one nationwide, targeting mostly music venues.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be all the questions in the chat. If anyone has any that went unanswered or you didn't get to put in the chat, you're welcome to speak out now. And is there anything you're especially looking forward to with the future of your work at Upstream, Macy, since your position is, I love your title, it's very unique. So what's your passion with Upstream?
It's very long. I would say that my passion is I get to work with folks across North America, which is great, but I'm very excited about the local work happening in my city of Austin. So I am involved with the Reuse Coalition here, and we're doing some exciting things trying to partner with the city. So I would say that's what I'm most excited about. Is I used to be an organizer, so getting to do some local work on the ground has been really wonderful.
Awesome. I think that might be it then, but thank you very much for your time and your presentation. Those were so many statistics that I hadn't heard of, but those comparisons between different types of materials and the LCA reports and just the staggering findings that, of course, reuse wins is so important. And yeah, such a detailed report, and it's going to take me some time to process all those numbers. So thank you very much for sharing all of them. And yeah, there's been a lot of positive words in the chat. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you again to Alex and Ramiro from Plan for joining us, and for all of you attendees for coming and being participative in the chat and sharing your questions and your time with us. So thank you all for joining us for the past hour and a half. This has been a session hosted by the University Climate Ambassador Program at the Global Climate Pledge, and we will be hosting more webinars soon on a variety of different topics, which you can keep up to date with on the events page of the Global Climate Pledge website, which I am going to put in the chat. And that is it. Thank you very much.